Thanks for tuning into this channel, but 80% of you are still unsubscribed. If you could just hit that button, it allows us to bring you loads more content and you'll be doing us a massive favour. So we're at that time of year, we all want to know what we're going to do for our training, especially in like the winter time. Basically, my top 3 winter training sessions, what should you focus on? Especially if you like short on time, which most of us are. If you're watching this, then my guess is that you haven't got much time. You've probably got between 6, maybe 12 hours a week.
Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
I've always found the most bang for buck training is going to be doing a lot of zone 3 and sweet spot training. So it's trying to maximize like the time that you've got available. Generally, I'd say that most people in the week, they've got between like an hour and 90 minutes. You might have 2 hours. And then at the weekend, you've generally got a bit more time for like your long endurance aerobic riding. So when we talk about like zone 3, or sweet spot, then generally we're going to work anywhere between like 80 to 90% of like your threshold power, so whatever your FTP is. And generally I found the best and most rewarding way of training is if you do generally starting off with like 30-minute blocks. So if you do like an hour, you can break that into like 3 by 10, 2 by 15. And then over time, in the coming weeks, you want to extend that time out in the zone till you reach like an hour. I always say if you can hit like an hour at sweet spot, then you're pretty much going to be like bulletproof. And generally, in between like each interval, you generally have like you'd have a warm-up period. You'd hit the interval, and then you generally have a 10-minute recovery, and then you go again. And that's going to be like the most rewarding way that you're going to try and get a quality session in within like the week. Generally, I try if you're doing like 5 sessions a week, then generally you definitely want to have like one of those sessions within your training. If you've got a bit more time, you've got like you're training 6 to 7 days a week, then I'd put like 2 of those in. The next session I always find like works like really well, especially like this time of year, is doing like some overgear work or torque work. That's the new in word at the minute. Generally, for those sort of blocks, you want to be having the torque generally between like a cadence of 40 to 50 RPM, and I would keep those blocks initially around like 3 to 4 minutes. A good way of doing this is you can either do it on a hill. That's probably the best way of developing like the torque. And when you're doing these sessions, if you're on like your road bike and you want to be on the hood, and what we don't want to be doing is like rocking all over the bike. You want a solid position, you're engaging your core, and you're not rotating the pelvis forward. Or if you're on like your time trial bike, we don't want a position, like where you're swaying like side to side. It wants to be a solid position, and you almost like rolling the barrel in the position itself. So what you do is between like 12 and 5, you're going to push down on the pedal stroke. Then you're going to ideally drop like the ankle a little bit, and then you're going to pull over the top. We don't want to be like going like from side to side with those type of sessions. And in that type of session, I would generally try and hit I'd probably start off with like 5 intervals, and you probably want to get to the stage where you're hitting like 8 sets, and you could develop that over each week. You could just add like 1 rep, and the recovery time that you'd want in between them, and generally you just lift the cadence up between like 90 to 100 revs. I generally have like 2 to 3 minutes recovery in between. So a real good one is basically if you go up a hill and down, that's a great way of developing like torque work. And again, you want to build that into like an hour to 90-minute sessions really. And it's a really good one this time of year. Like if you're concerned about like riding your time trial bike, you want to develop the position, it's a great session for it. And you can do this on the turbo trainer as well. Sometimes you really need like a big gear, because the resistance on like the trainer, you can probably get to like 60-70 revs, but ideally you want it between like 40 and 50 a lot of the time to develop that neuromuscular pattern. So a good one to bring into like your training. Another good session this time of year is just like some short, intense. You can either have like what I call like a microburst interval, which is like a 10 to 30 second like max out effort, and just develop those into like a 30-minute block really. So every 4.5 minutes you could just hit like a nice big surge, and there's no like limit on the power there. You just want to hit it. But just do it in like over a 30-minute duration really. Again, you can, if you're more like a triathlete time trial rider, then I would do that seated. If you're trying to develop into being a bit more punchier, like you're a road athlete, then again it's a great way of, like you don't want to over exceed. You want to try and build training, because that's where the biggest reward that you're going to get from all of this is it's like consistency. Like it's very easy like this time of year, there's so many different intervals, but we want to develop like consistency within like the training each week. So we're just building like this pattern of training stress. So for like most people, if we looked at like training peaks, you're probably going to be around like 450 to 500 TSS for like most people. If you're like a professional triathlete, or you're probably going to be up closer to like 1,000. But each week, if you're developing like 10 points, and then you get to a point that like fatigue will start to set in, that's when you can just put a bit of recovery time to one side, let that good work sink in, then go again. There's so many different ways of training, but I'd say like this time of year, like you start integrating like those type of sets within, like a good training plan. So the rest of the time you're spending like a lot of time in like zone 2. If you are limited on time, what I would say in zone 2 is like you probably want to just push it up to like that bit more of a top end of the zone really. And then overall you're just going to get a solid training program really. But obviously if you want to know like more, and you want the training to be designed around like yourself, then get in touch, and then we've got a team of coaches that can help you. So good luck with it all.